Today we're talking about the ASAP Quick Pick, and I want to be precise about what we mean by that. Not ASAP as urgency for its own sake, not ASAP as a productivity hack, ASAP as a doctrine answer to a specific problem that every content consumer on this platform of YouTube has encountered, and almost none of them has named correctly. Before we get into the 5 questions this session will answer, I want to give you the frame that holds all of them together. Because without the frame, the technique is just the tip. The tip fades, the frame stays. The frame is a cycle. You have encountered a version of it before. 4 stages. They move in order and they repeat. Unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. You're saving videos to watch later. You feel like you have a system. You don't yet know that the system has a foundational problem built into it. Conscious incompetence. You know the problem. You can name it, but you haven't built the habit that solves it. The knowledge is there. The technique isn't automatic yet. It's the uncomfortable middle. Most people stop here. Conscious competence. You're actively routing. You know what you're doing and why. Every save is a decision. The playlist titles mean something. The system is working, and you can feel it working because you have to think about it. Unconscious competence. The routing decision becomes second nature. The titles become fast. The binary decision happens before you've consciously deliberated. The stratigraphy, the visible, datable, sortable record of what you deliberately consumed and why, builds itself through habit. And then the cycle repeats at a higher level of complexity, with a richer system and a wider hypergraph. That is the arc of what this session is actually about. Today's content maps directly onto that cycle. The ASAP Quick Pick is the specific technique that moves you from unconscious incompetence, saving videos into one differentiated bucket, into the beginning of conscious competence. It is, as the title says, the first doctrine move. 5 questions. Let's go. Question number 1. Watch Later asked one question. Do you want to save this video? It never asked the more important question, will you actually consume it and when? The ASAP Quick Pick was built to answer that second question. So what is it? What problem does it solve that Watch Later could not? And why does introducing time and intent into your playlist system change everything about how you operate as a content consumer? Listen, Watch Later is not a bad feature. I want to be clear about that at the top. Watch Later represents something real. It represents the moment a content consumer looks at a video and makes a deliberate decision. This matters enough to save. That is not nothing. That is the beginning of conscious content consumption. You tapped the video. You put it somewhere intentionally. But Watch Later is still a bucket with one dimension. And here is what I mean by that. When you save a video to watch later, the platform asks you exactly one question. Do you want to save this video? You answer yes. The video goes into the bucket grows, and the platform never follows up. It never asks, when are you planning to watch this? It never asks, is this something you need now or something you want to archive for a later moment in your life? It never distinguishes between the video you need to consume this week and the video you might want to revisit in a year. It treats all saved content identically. One bucket, one label, no time, no intent, no hierarchy. And that is the foundational problem. The ASAP Quick Pick was built to answer the second question. The question Watch Later never asked. Will you actually consume it? And when? That is the question. And the moment you build a playlist around that specific question, the moment you give that question a container, a title, a specific time horizon, something shifts in how you operate as a content consumer. Let me explain what that shift actually looks like. Before the ASAP Quick Pick, most of us are working with a single bucket. Everything goes in, videos for right now sit next to videos saved 6 months ago that have never been touched. That bucket becomes a cold storage without our permission. We didn't choose to make it cold storage. It became cold storage because we never introduced time. The quick pick, the ASAP quick pick, introduces time. When I started building ASAP playlists, the original intent was direct. I wanted to watch this now. Not eventually, not in a month, now. This content reflects something I'm living through, something I'm thinking about, something relevant to my present experience, coming from the subscription box, from the recommendation feed, from the search results. It belongs here in this specific temporal container because now is when it matters. And here is what that does to the rest of your system. Once you have an ASAP quick pick, watch later does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes what it probably always should have been. Genuine cold storage, long-term saves, videos you want to hold without a specific consumption horizon, things you might return to in a month, a quarter, maybe a year, maybe a decade, things worth preserving but not urgently needed. That transformation happens not because you deleted anything. It happens because you gave your immediate consumption intent its own container. You separated the now from the eventual, and that separation is load bearing. It begins with the title. Remember that. We're going to come back to it. The ASAP Quick Pick can be as simple as ASAP 1, ASAP 2, an ordered numbering schema that does nothing more than sequence your immediate consumption buckets over time. Or it can become more granular. ASAP AI, ASAP Natural Science, ASAP Esoteric, a category-specific ASAP series that starts to tell you something about what you're drawn to right now, this week, this month, as opposed to in general. Or you can work with a parenthetical notation and get more specific about how you write a title, a continuous title across playlist series. The naming schema can become flexible. What is not flexible is the starting condition. Before any of that granularity becomes possible, the ASAP Quick Pick has to exist. The container has to be named because everyone who uses playlists at all understands watch later. Everyone who has ever saved a video understands the gesture of saving. The ASAP Quick Pick is differentiated enough from that gesture. It has a specific name, a specific temporal intent, a specific relationship to your immediate consumption window. That it functions as a legible upgrade, not an alien system, a visible next step. The ASAP Quick Pick is the softest possible entry point into playlist theory. It is close enough to watch later that anyone can recognize what it's doing and different enough that it answers the question watch later never asked. That is what makes it a first doctrine. That is what makes it the first doctrine move. Question number 2. The moment you have an ASAP playlist, every video you consider saving becomes a binary decision. Is this for right now, or is it something else? That decision is the difference between passive saving and active routing. So what does it feel like in practice to make that call in real time? And what does it mean for your relationship to content when you are the one deciding priority instead of letting the platform decide for you? This is the question at the center of this session. And I want to spend real time here because this is where the doctrine lives. Here is what the binary choice actually looks like. You're on YouTube. Something appears in your home feed, your subscription box, your search results, and the question that arises immediately before you've consciously deliberated is this for right now or is this something else? If it's for right now, ASAP quick pick. If it's something else, something for later, something topically specific, something you want to hold but not consume immediately, the routing decision bifurcates into a different container, a category specific quick pick, a longer term save, a watch later playlist as cold storage, a different bucket entirely. The crucial thing here is this. The moment you have an ASAP quick pick, that bifurcation becomes possible. Before it, you only had one bucket. After it, you have a decision, and a decision is different from a default. Let me give the other side of this its proper due. Using watch later is already a form of conscious engagement. I'm not taking that away from anyone who uses it. If you're tapping videos and placing them into watch later intentionally because there's a reason behind that tap, because you know why you're saving it, you are already exercising a form of playlist competence. That is meaningfully different from liking a video. Liking a video leaves a trace. Saving to a playlist is a routing decision, even if it's a course run. The question is what happens when that system reaches its limits. ASAP Quick Pick extends the system. It adds granularity. It adds time. It adds intent beyond the bare minimum of I want to keep this. It asks for how long, for what purpose, for which version of myself. The one here, right now, or the one who might circle back in a quarter, in a year, in a decade. Is this for right now or is it something else? That question, practiced consistently, changes your relationship to content at a fundamental level because the platform has its own answer to that question. And its answer is always the same. Consume this now because this is what the algorithm decided you need at this moment. The recommendation feed is the platform exercising priority on your behalf. It decides what surfaces. It decides what you see next. And as long as you're operating without a routing system, you are, in a very real sense, outsourcing the priority decision to the platform. The ASAP Quick Pick is the specific intervention that begins to reverse that. What does it feel like in practice? I'll let that breathe. What does it feel like in practice? It feels deliberate. And at first, it feels like effort because conscious competence always does. You're conditioning something, you're building a neural pathway that wasn't there before. A gesture, the tap, the gesture, the tap, the title selection, the placement becomes the physical instantiation of a decision you're making consciously. Over time, that decision gets faster. The routing becomes intuitive, but it starts as effort. And the effort is the point. Because here is what that effort actually produces. You start to notice patterns in your own routing. You find yourself putting a large number of videos into a specific ASAP category and thinking, I guess this matters to me right now. You find yourself looking at a video and realizing it doesn't belong in any of your current containers, which is itself information. You develop, through the practice of routing, a live map of your own attention. That is not something the platform gives you. That is something you build. And that is the difference between passive saving and active routing. Routing involves creating titles for your playlists and directing content towards different ASAP quick picks, different category specific quick picks, different areas of the hypergraph within the cybernetic ecology of YouTube. It is a decision with a destination. Saving is a gesture with a bucket. Now let's map this onto the cycle that opened this session, because the 5 questions we're covering today are not independent techniques. They are 5 angles on the same underlying movement through those 4 stages. Where are you right now? If you're currently using Watch Later as your only container, and you haven't yet thought about the fact that your saving behavior lacks a time horizon, that is unconscious incompetence. Not a criticism. That's where the cycle starts for everyone. You don't know what you don't know. If this session has named the gap, if you can now feel the problem that Watch Later creates, the question it never asks, that is conscious incompetence. You know the problem, you don't have the habit. Building your first ASAP quick pick and making the binary routing decision for the first time is conscious competence. You're doing the thing. It requires deliberate thought. The routing isn't automatic yet, but it's happening. And eventually, after months of practice, after the playlist system grows and titles accumulate and the stratigraphy builds, the routing becomes unconscious competence. You don't deliberate, you route. The system runs. The cycle repeats. Because there's always a next level of granularity. There's always a deeper question to answer about what you're consuming and why. That is the meta frame. And the ASAP quick pick is where it starts. Remember, it begins with the title. Question 3. Here is the scenario every content consumer has lived with. You are halfway through a 2-hour video and something crosses your home screen that looks important. Do you interrupt that video you're watching? Do you write it down somewhere? Do you click away and risk you losing your place? Playlist theory has a specific doctrine answer to that problem. So what is it? And why does having a doctrine answer to that moment matter more than what people would initially think? This scenario is worth sitting with for a moment because the discomfort of it is real. You are in the middle of something long form, a 2-hour deep dive, something you've been meaning to watch. And then there it is in your home feed or your subscription box, something that crosses your screen, a video that looks urgent, a video that looks relevant, something that looks like it needs your attention right now. What do? The platform has already built in a technical answer to this, and it's worth knowing. Your watch history functions as a synthetic return mechanism. If you click away from the video you're watching into the new one, YouTube's backend refreshes your watch position approximately every 30 to 90 seconds. The red bar at the red progress bar at the bottom of the thumbnail in your watch history preserves roughly where you were. You can return to your previous watch history and pick up very close to where you left off. That works. I'm not telling you it doesn't. At a certain velocity of content consumption, when you're managing a modest volume of saves, a manageable number of active threads, that technique is fully adequate. It requires no additional infrastructure. You use the platform's native memory surface and it serves the purpose. This is a pro tip that stands on its own merits at the right velocity. The doctrine answer lives in what happens when the technique reaches its limit. At higher velocity, when your subscription box is dense, when you're actively tracking multiple threads across multiple channels, when your home screen is servicing relevant videos within the same session, the watch history bounce becomes cognitively expensive. You're holding more variables. You're tracking more open threads. The native memory surface that served you at a lower velocity begins to create drag. That is when the ASAP quick pick becomes not a preference, but a doctrine answer. The doctrine answer is this: route it. Title the container, put the video somewhere specific. And here is what something specific means in practice. If it's for right now, if this interrupting video needs to be consumed in the current session, this day, this week, it goes into an ASAP quick pick. If it belongs to a specific topical thread you're tracking, it routes to a category-specific quick pick or a category-specific ASAP. If it's something you want to hold without a specific consumption horizon, it goes into watch later, now functioning as genuine cold storage. And here is why having a doctrine answer matters more than the technique itself. Most content consumers, when they encounter this scenario, improvise. They make a one-off decision. They bounce in and out. They try to remember. They lose the thread. They encounter the same video again 3 weeks later and can't recall whether they watched it, saved it, or left it somewhere in the feed. The doctrine answer removes this improvisation. It gives you a pre-committed response. You don't have to think about what to do in that moment because you've already decided what to do in that moment. The title system does the cognitive work before the situation arises. Remember, it begins with the title. That is why building the title structure before you need it, naming your ASAP quick pick before the interrupting video appears, is more useful than titling it after the fact. The container pre-buffers the intent. You know what the bucket is before the video needs a bucket, and that pre-buffered intent is what transitions you from improvising in the moment to executing doctrine in the moment. That is the difference the doctrine answer makes. Not that it solves a technically impossible problem. The platform already has a workaround that works at a lower velocity. What the doctrine answer solves is the cognitive load of repeated improvisation at scale. It replaces a one-off decision with a system, and that system compounds. Question number 4. Take a look at our Politics 4 Quick Pick series. Question 4. The platform gives you an alternative to routing. Click the new video. Go to your watch history. Click back to what you were watching. That works, technically, but what are you actually risking when you bounce in and out of videos that way? And what does playlist theory preserve for you that the watch history workaround cannot? We just said the watch history bounce works, and it does. Let's be precise about what it preserves and what it doesn't. What the watch history bounce preserves: your physical place in the video, your progress marker, your ability to return to approximately where you left off. What it does not preserve: the insight. Here's what I mean. Playlist theory preserves an insight in terms of playlist title and schema. The word playlist carries a meaning that watch history cannot replicate. A playlist is named. A watch history is generated. A playlist reflects a decision you made. A watch history reflects moment. A watch history reflects movement you made. Those are different things. One is a record of your routing choices. The other is a record of your navigation behavior. We call it playlist theory because what we are describing is an interconnecting series of lattice structures, containers with titles, with intentions, with specific relationships to the time and category of your consumption that operate together as a reflection of your personal relationship to YouTube as a cybernetic ecology. Each title is a node. Each routing decision is an edge. Each playlist is a named region of that ecology that you have deliberately carved out and maintained. Watch history is none of those things. Watch history is the platform's record of your movement. You didn't title it. You didn't decide what belongs in it. You didn't pre-buffer intent into it. The platform generates it passively as a side effect of your behavior, and it holds it for a window before older entries become practically inaccessible. Now, what are you risking when you bounce in and out of videos without a routing system? At lower velocity, very little. The bounce works. The watch history serves as a synthetic return mechanism. The cognitive load is manageable. The technique is sound. At a higher velocity, the risk is the loss of conscious competence. When you are managing multiple open threads and bouncing between them through watch history, the system becomes opaque to you. You can no longer see at a glance what you are consuming and why. The intention behind each video disappears into an undifferentiated scroll. You're moving, but you don't have a map of your movement. Playlist theory preserves your conscious competence before it forces you to index what you're consuming. It forces you to start with the title, whether that's something as simple as an ASAP quick pick or something more detailed like a category specific quick pick or a temporal playlist that anchors a specific period of time in your consumption history. That is what conditions you from being a passive consumer into being an active consumer. The platform is not the enemy in this framing. The recommendation feed, the subscription box, the search results, these are routes. They are also content. They have their own logic, and that logic can be conditioned. Your watch history conditions your recommendation engine. Your subscriptions condition it. The playlists you build and add to condition it. The search terms you use conditions it. You are always conditioning you are always in a conditioning relationship with the platform. That's what makes it a cybernetic ecology. The difference is whether you are conditioning it deliberately or accidentally. Active routing is deliberate conditioning. You are not just using the platform, you are shaping it. And the platform system, the playlist system, with its titles, its categories, its ASAP temporal containers, is the specific mechanism through which that shaping happens consciously. That is what watch history cannot give you. The title is the intentionality made visible. As you can see, this is a Natural Science 2 quick pick, sorted by most popular. Content from over 5 years ago. Question number 5. Over time, you are consistently routing content into an ASAP playlist and category-specific playlists rather than letting videos accumulate in watch history. Something starts to emerge, a stratigraphy, a visible record of what you deliberately consumed and why. So what does that stratigraphy actually look like when you pull it up? And what does it tell you about yourself as a content consumer that watch history alone never could? And why is building it intentionally different from having a long watch history? Let me show you what I mean. Or let me tell you what I mean. I want to go to my playlist library to pull up something specific. On your screen right now is Natural Science 2, but in this example, we're pulling up a temporal quick pick from Q3 Wednesday, most sorted by date added, oldest to newest. This is a playlist I built. What you're seeing right now is Natural Science 2, but in this example, we're talking about a playlist from top to bottom with the exact sequence in which I routed videos into a container over the course of this quarter. That's because in this example, this is a temporal playlist sorted by date added, and it's for Wednesday of Q3 2024. So what does the content tell me? There is a significant density of esoteric material here. AI content, culture commentary across economics, geopolitics, personality theory, naturalist roots, culture commentary, specific mix of voices that tells me exactly what I was tracking during that period of time. This is not my watch history. My watch history from that period is gone, inaccessible, buried under the volume of everything that came after. This playlist is still here. It is still sortable. I can sort by date added oldest. I can sort by date published. I can sort by most popular. Each sort order reveals a different dimension of that quarter's consumption. Date added oldest shows my routing behavior. In what sequence did I decide to add things to this container? Date published shows me the production environment, what was being made and published during that period in these specific domains. Most popular shows me what among what I was consuming had the broadest resonance in the wider culture. That is the data layer that the long watch history cannot give you, because watch history does not let you sort this way. And it's why synthetic watch history can be valuable. But we'll talk about that another time. Listen, watch history does not let you go back 2 years and apply a filter. Watch history shows you a scroll that goes backwards until it becomes practically unnavigable. The playlist gives you all of this. Now let me show you the current ASAP quick pick. In this example, ASAP 19.2, one of our most current ASAP quick picks. This on your screen is Natural Science 2, sorted from most popular back to a specific period in the day. The naming schema for this ASAP quick pick in this example, this is the night 19.2. This is the 19th quarter of the ASAP series, the second month of Q2, which puts us in May 2026. That is the temporal specificity baked into the title. That title is not decoration. That title is a date stamp. It tells anyone, including my future self, exactly when this content was routed within a specific quarter, within a specific month, within a specific arc of the broader series. And that is what a stratigraphy actually looks like in practice. The word comes from geology. Stratigraphy is the study of rock strata, the layers of sediment that accumulate over time and, when read correctly, tell you what was happening in that environment during each period of deposition. Each layer is a record. The deeper you go, the further in time you go. The layers don't lie. Your playlist system is your stratigraphy. Each ASAP quick pick is a temporal layer. Each category specific quick pick is a layer in a topical column, organized by domain rather than by time, but a column nonetheless. Sorted by date added oldest, you can read the column from bottom to top and see exactly how your engagement with that domain developed over time. What you were consuming, in what space early on, what shifted, what became more dense, what dropped away. That is information watch history cannot surface for you. For content consumers who have been on YouTube for a decade or more, who have watched enormous volumes of material, the watch history scroll goes back months at best, before it practically becomes inaccessible. You can use the watch history search feature to locate specific content, but you cannot pull up a specific week of the specific quarter and ask, what was I consuming on Fridays in Q3 2024, and what did that material have in common? I can do that because I built a system that makes it answerable. And here is why building it intentionally is different from having a long watch history. A long watch history is a record of movement. A playlist system is a record of decisions. Those are different archives. One tells you where you went, the other tells you what you chose to hold. The distinction matters because the thing you are building towards, the active content consumer who understands, remembers, recognizes, and indexes content they consume over time, is someone who is developing a consume digest, a structured, navigable personal record of their relationship to YouTube as a cybernetic ecology, not a list of videos, a map of engagement, a stratigraphy of intention. The ASAP Quick Pick is how that stratigraphy begins. It is the first title, the first container, the first deliberate routing decision. And over 19 quarters, over 4.5 years of consistent practice, you get to 19.2 ASAP Quick Pick. You get to a system with layers, with history, with the ability to pull up any quarter, any month, any topical thread and read exactly what you were tracking and why. That is what intentional building produces. That is what watch history alone cannot give you. The cycle returns. We started this session with a frame, 4 stages. Let me close by naming where each of those stages sits with what we've been covering today. Unconscious incompetence is watched later as your only container. You don't know that your saving behavior lacks a time horizon. You don't know that the second question, will you actually consume it and when, has never been answered. The system feels functional because it's the only system you have. Conscious incompetence is where you are right now if this session landed. You can name the gap. Watch later does not introduce time. Watch later does not introduce intent. The second question has been named. The routing infrastructure does not yet exist in your library. Conscious competence begins the day you title your first ASAP Quick Pick, ASAP 1, or ASAP followed by a quarter and a month, or a category-specific quick pick for whatever thread you're most urgently tracking right now. The container exists. The binary decision is now possible. Is this for right now, or is it something else? You make that call consciously with effort because the neural pathway is still being conditioned. Unconscious competence is ASAP 19.2. It's a stratigraphy that goes back 4.5 years. It's the routing decision that happens before you've consciously deliberated. It's the system that has been maintained long enough to become the default, and the default has become the foundation for everything built on top of it. The cycle repeats. There will be a moment when unconscious competence at this level gives way to a recognition of a new gap, a new level of granularity, a new question the current system doesn't answer, a new doctrine that extends the architecture further. That is not a failure. That is a cycle working as designed. That is the cycle working as designed. Remember, it begins with a title. And the first title, the first doctrine move, is the ASAP Quick Pick. This has been As an Aggregator. Now, if you've enjoyed this content and you stayed till the end, I want you to check out the content that we curate on our playlist archive channel, Mr. Pollock 890. Mr. Polik 890. Search Mr. Pollock 890 and playlist to find our playlist on YouTube. This on your screen is an example of a playlist that we curate. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day, evening, afternoon, morning, evening, good night, good morning, good evening, and you're welcome.